What's going on there, folks? Good Saturday afternoon. It is the Earthmaster here. On the Saturday, May 14th, 2022 date, it's about 12:46 p.m. California time. The latest quake shows some activity right around here, Big Island of Hawaii, with a 2.1, the latest quake on the globe. Let's go ahead and check out first something happening on the sun there. Pretty large eruption of a prominence here. Let me back off here and see if I can bring this up. There we go. This is the Go Solar ultraviolet imagery movie of this prominence that's kind of took a lift off the surface of the sun today. I want to bring this into action, and you guys can see the video here. Look at that spectacular view of the sun, and that sometimes called a filament, and a lot of times they'll just loop around the surface of the sun, and then sometimes they'll get blasted off, such as the one that just kicked off today. Now, it's not anything really to worry about. I know it looks super large, probably thousands of times or thousands of miles long, more than that probably. But these things right here, basically it's a large structure of tangled magnetic field lines that keep dense concentrations of solar plasma suspended above the Earth's surface. But in times like this, things tend to blast off. And if they do blast off, it's basically just solar plasma and a CME. It is not Earth directed. This one's kind of facing away from Earth, but we'll watch it in the coming days. They're pretty much go read a little information here from the NASA website. Solar prominence is a large, bright feature extending outward from the sun's surface. Prominences are anchored to the sun's surface in the photosphere and extend outwards into the sun's hot outer atmosphere called the corona. Prominence forms over timescales of about a day, and stable ones may persist in the corona for several months, looping hundreds of thousands of miles into space. The red glowing looped material is plasma, a hot glass comprised of electrically charged hydrogen and helium. The prominence plasma flows along a tangled and twisted structure of magnetic fields generated by the sun's internal dynamo. An erupting prominence occurs when such a structure becomes unstable and bursts outward, releasing the plasma. So basically a CME in that aspect. So quite the awesome view. I thought I'd share that right off the bat. And this, like I said, this just lifting up off the sun here within the last hour or so. Pretty awesome feature. Looking at the latest earthquake activity here, shows some movement. This is 2.5 and above here for the states. Got some activity in Oklahoma kind of ramping up out here outside of Horntown, Oklahoma. Never actually heard of that area. Outside of Holdenville, it looks like. Let's go ahead and see what we got going on here. Looks like there was a prior pre-earthquake here. Little 1.5 kicked up, and then about 2 minutes later a 3.5 in the same area. See what we got for natural and or at least oil wells and operations out here, which I can already see scattered out and about here. See what we got. Yeah, it looks like there's some out there. It looks like some older ones too. You can still kind of see the scars of the of those operations. None specifically where this 3.5 struck. It doesn't look like it. It looks like maybe a little farmhouse out here. This earthquake, though, struck at about 5 kilometers or so into the region. Now, there's definitely some older and some nearby operations. It looks like here, although not as many as certain areas to the west and north of here. So we'll keep an eye on it. Either way, it's a little back-to-back little sequence of earthquakes here out in the Oklahoma region outside of Holdenville once again, and some movement up here into the just south of Fairview, it looks like, into the, I'm sure these are some let's see here, hold on a second here, a couple more operations out here. Looks like these squares indicating the gas and oil operations. I can't tell if those are recent or some older ones. A lot of times they get abandoned and but the damage is still done out there. All right, moving on past this, Texas still seeing a ramping up of movement, it looks like, around the Guadalupe Peak area. A couple 2s and 3s overnight in that region. West Coast activity has been fairly active here in the northern part of the state of California. Now, of course, if you recall, I'm going to go ahead and bring up the tremor map here from last night. Had a pretty good increase in tremor, about 229 epicenters of tremor, mostly here into the Northern California area. This is like day number 3 of concentrated tremor here at the southern end of the Cascadia. Of course, last night we did see pretty broad region of tremor up and down almost the entire length of the Cascadia spread out here. But most of it confined into Northern California over the past 3 days or so. And that's kind of why we're seeing a little uptick in earthquake activity upstream of the tremor. Tremor activity, as you've seen there on the map, kind of looks like it's more inland, right? But you got to remember, the more inland it looks here on the map, the more downstream into the subduction zone, further beneath the surface, is what's where these tremors are taking place. So tremor downstream, and then further locked region upstream, creating these earthquakes closer to the the locked area up here of the Cascadia subduction zone. Some of these earthquakes still fairly deep. One down there at about 20 kilometers. The latest quake here on the this is going to be the Pacific side of the plate. Actually, it looks like it might be right there on the plate boundary itself. Got 2.0 at 18 kilometers here, very close to the Mendocino Triple Point Junction area. In fact, we've seen one here, 3.0. That was earlier this morning as well within that region. So definitely a little activity ramping up here along the Northern California coastline. Again, associated with pressure and movement along the Cascadia subduction zone. Southern, or at least central, I guess a lot of people consider this Northern California. Okay, right around the Bay Area, we'll call it Bay Area. Some movement on the San Andreas Fault system here outside of Redwood City. Looks like a 1 and a little 2-pointer kicking up there, somewhat deep onto the San Andreas Fault, 12 kilometers. So a little bit of activity striking this region. I think it was yesterday or the day before. Let me see here. Maybe a couple days ago. We've seen some activity a little bit further up north here along the San Andreas Fault as well, just outside the Bay Area or the San Francisco region. So overall, dynamically, things look to be increasing here along the West Coast plate boundary. The San Andreas Fault, that is. Some movement outside of San Jose as well, inland. Looks like around the Morgan Hill area, just off of the Calaveras Fault Zone. Pretty lengthy fault system that extends up towards the Bay Area. It is a pretty dominant fault here after the San Andreas Fault, so a lot of stress and slip rate on that fault system, capable of producing a pretty damaging earthquake in the future. Some movement outside of Lake Isabella area. A couple small microquakes there around the lake, and Ridgecrest area kind of tapering off a little bit. We did see some uptick in movement last night that has since kind of mellowed out and kind of worked its way up north, it appears. Southern California, Pacific side of the plate boundary, a little scattered activity up and down the land, mostly confined to the San Jacinto Fault Zone. Little activity here at the San Andreas Fault, right? On each side here, Pacific and the North American side. Brawley seismic zone, 2 earthquakes in there today. Looks like a 1.6 and a 1.3 just south of the Brawley area. Yeah, so West Coast, a little bit of activity ramping up here, and more specifically the Northern California region there with the Cascadia subduction zone. Movement into the Gulf of Alaska with a 2.0 near McCarthy, Alaska. No depth available for that earthquake, and low activity throughout the Aleutian Trench. Pretty quiet, though, along the Kuril-Kamchatka and the Japan Trench area. This activity here from earlier this morning, late last night, outside of Taiwan and the Japan area. Papua New Guinea, seeing a couple earthquakes here with a 5.1, and some activity really ramping up here along the Kermadec Trench. Kind of watching this pretty closely. Been talking about the upstream areas that have not seen any sufficient movement, and I'm talking probably about 5.5 or higher in this area of the Kermadec Trench. We're starting to notice a little bit of uptick and possibly leading to something bigger in this area. It's been all too quiet here in recent weeks and past month or so, while the rest of the Pacific plate and areas up north continue to, of course, we've seen 6s and quite a few 5s and whatnot here over the past couple weeks, with just very minimal adjustment here along the Kermadec Trench at the subduction zone level. We have seen quite a bit of deep movement, but this area right here where the highest slip rate and the pressure builds has not seen that release. But it could be very soon. We'll keep an eye on that pretty closely. South America region, low activity into the Peru-Chile Trench, looks like 4.7 and 4.3, although not a whole lot of activity ramping up there today. Puerto Rico Trench region seeing some activity, it looks like, right smack dab on it, with these 2 earthquakes here, pretty deep, 50 kilometers for a 3.7 and a 3.1 there into the Puerto Rico Trench area. Let's see, the rest of the world looks pretty quiet. Just a couple scattered earthquakes around the Greece area and also Afghanistan. These were from last night. No subsequent movement there taking place today. I did see a little activity out here around the volcano here in Iceland area. I was looking at that a little bit earlier. No major changes right now, just 4.5 at 10 kilometers. Just outside here, let me bring up the satellite view. Let's see, I'm not for sure exactly what we got there in that region, but there's a lot of volcanic areas up here that have been active. So we'll keep an eye on that region. Yellowstone National Park, checking out the movement or lack of movement once again. Nothing showing up, folks. Nada. No suspicious earthquakes over here along the eastern section of the park. So it looks like a beautiful clear day, at least far as seismically speaking, there at Yellowstone National Park. Checking out the volcanic activity here at Mount St. Helens. Let's see here. What do we got? I'll check out the recent seismograph station here and see if anything's being reported by these folks here. Looks like still a handful of quakes. It's kind of been ongoing here for a couple weeks or so. Just seen a little swarm of microquakes in the area of Mount St. Helens. See these red, blue spikes and little black ones as well. No significant swarming, no magma movement, just a little bit of microquake activity there at Mount St. Helens. So just something I've been watching pretty closely, but there's no signs of any volcanic unrest there. In fact, the GPS monitors still show subsidence there of the caldera, but then again, like I say, things can change in the blink of an eye. All right, so aside from that solar prominence there we've seen earlier at the update video, got a couple sunspots, quite a few sunspots rotating into view. 3007 seems to be the culprit right now of possibly perhaps an M flare coming up here. It is Earth directed. Got some further development here around the eastern limb, northeastern limb here of the sun. That's a pretty massive sunspot. We'll see what that looks like in the coming days. Either way, it's going to be very active here as far as solar weather goes here pretty soon. I have just an odd feeling. We're looking at a little bit of amplification here of the KP index here in the, looks like the 16th time frame. A little bit of geomagnetic storming could kick in due to the coronal hole features that have been facing Earth for a day or two now and will be facing the Earth. Got a couple other smaller ones that will be rotating into view squarely directly facing Earth within the coming days here. But the prominence here, a lot of these loops are pretty impressive to watch and see. Again, that's a pretty awesome lift off there of that filament, the solar prominence. A lot of times they don't do that, but that's just quite impressive. I'd hate to be right next to that, but nothing to worry about as far as any effects here on Earth. If anything, depending on what, like I say, it's kind of facing away from us right now, but even if that was squarely facing us, it would just probably be possibly some storming going on, just similar to what you would see with a CME when a pretty strong flare kicks up. But yeah, this site's pretty cool. Storm Weather Prediction Center. You can check out all sorts of different images here and bring that back down to a little bit normal size here. A lot of cool imagery and some movies on this site. All right, let me go back here to the Solar Ham site and see what these guys are chatting about. The solar flare detection chart shows a little C flare within the last hour or so. No major events, but like I said, things are starting to get pretty active on the sun. And we'll see what that looks like in the coming days. KP index currently right around the 3 range. As far as flare threats go, looks like a 10% chance of an X flare, 45% chance of an M flare, 99% chance of a C flare. Like I said, we'll see what happens in the coming days, folks. I'm going to bounce out of here. Enjoy the weekend here. It's supposed to be about 95 degrees, pretty hot. Power has been back on and stable for now, so we'll hopefully we'll keep that going. Don't need any more power outages there. Friday the 13th was kind of interesting there. I'm glad we're past that date. 1.1, the latest quake there into the area of California, it looks like. So watching the West Coast, specifically with that ongoing activity in the tremor and the subsequent upstream movement taking place there along the southern end of the Cascadia right now. So, all right, guys, have a good day. We will chat you a little bit later on with the update video tonight. Stay safe, folks.